Hello everyone, good morning and thank you for subscribing my channel at first place. This is a small announcement on the new Azure batch which I'm planning to start from 1st of May, and the timing is morning 6:45 to 8 o'clock. So you can directly join the WebEx meeting by using this link on the 1st of May at 6:45. Let me quickly share some details related to the course content. I'll go to Azure. So in this training, we are focusing majorly on administration and then architect, then Azure DevOps certification perspective, which is going to be some real-time scenarios and some hands-on. When I say hands-on, it's going to be roughly around 75% hands-on, and a couple of sessions we will not be able to do a hands-on due to technical limitations. So that we will try to cover off in theoretical example, express route or let's say AD P3 licenses or P2 licenses, something, right? So let me quickly share the course content, what I'm going to cover off in this training. I will start with the fundamentals. Before this, we will try to discuss the on-premise versus Azure, how the on-premise works and how the cloud functionality looks like. Then we will start with the Azure fundamentals. Then we will talk about Azure networking side of the components, which is IaaS components, and we'll start with the networking. Then we'll try to understand the network security, how the network security groups configure and application security groups configure, and security will be provided at the endpoint level. Now, again, at the infrastructure level, overall as a solution, how the firewall can control the traffic and provide you the enhanced security at the main entry level, so that we will try to configure and test. Then we'll talk about compute, which is Azure virtual machines we'll start off with, and then we'll talk about high availability solution designing. And one of the component is load balancer, how the load balancer functions and how you can configure it and manage it. And again, we'll talk about Azure DNS, which is the DNS level load balancing plus your domain functionality or the public domain functionality, how you can configure and manage it, that we will test. Then your Azure standard load balancer. There's a basic load balancer and standard one, the two types of load balancers. I think basic is going to depreciate soon, but we will try to test both of them in two different scenarios. So again, I will talk about application gateway and web application firewall. So how your layer 7 load balancer works, and then your enhanced security to an application using WAF, how we will provide the security, that we will try to test it out here. Then we'll talk about another load balancer, which is front door, which is also comes with the by default CDN integration. So it is CDN come the load balancer. So how we gonna configure and manage this, that we will test it. So then we'll talk about scaling. When it comes to scaling, how the virtual machine skill sets can be configured and managed in terms of day to day, that we will try to discuss here. So then we will move on to storage side of the storage side of the Azure. Means to say within the IaaS you have a network, compute, and third component is obviously storage, right? So we'll talk about storage, how the various services in the Azure that offers the various types of storages, and then how you will integrate them within the Azure, and what is a use case, and how you will manage it in terms of day to day. That we will try to discuss here. Then we'll talk about backup and disaster recovery for your IaaS services, including virtual machines and then your storage account and other stuff, how you will take a backup and restore. And then when it comes to an application recoverability in case of DR, how you will perform the BCDR drills and stuff using the recovery service vault, that we will try to test here. Then we'll move on to PaaS services, platform as a service components. And one of the PaaS services is your databases, how Azure offers the various PaaS databases, including SQL, MySQL, Postgres, MariaDB, and MariaDB is going to end of life soon. So then we'll talk about Cosmos DB and how Mongo API works and other stuff, that we will try to discuss here. Then we'll talk about PaaS applications. When I say PaaS applications, it comes under your app services and function app and logic app. So section 14 and 15 essentially covers all the PaaS applications based on the type of application invoke or application functionality. You will try to use the respective PaaS service. If you want to run a web applications or web-based solutions, then you will go for Azure App Services. And if you want to execute any code and then run some logic or along with logic or to do some API calling and stuff, then you will use a logic or function app based on need, right? But yeah, so for the function app and logic app, I think we need have working logic. So since we're not the developers from Azure standpoint, there are very limited understanding of how the API can be called and then how the execution will take place and what is the outcome of it. That is something from the developer standpoint we can do a testing very in depth. But yeah, due to the developer understanding, sorry, due to lack of developer understanding, we might see smaller scenarios over here. So as I said, this is one of the for infrastructure guy, one of the drawback area, to be honest, right? So now we'll talk about security. When it comes to security, how we will manage the security within the Azure using Active Directory, AD Connect, and AD Sync. How you will synchronize the users from on-premise to Azure, and then how you will provide the role-based access control, and how you will manage the service principals and application side of the integrations and stuff using the Azure Active Directory. That we will try to test it. Then we'll talk about Azure role-based management and then automation. So how the automation runbooks works, the automation workbooks, and desired state configurations works in the Azure, that we will try to understand here. Then when it comes to microservices world, we'll talk about the difference between your normal virtual machine and then containers, how the container world looks like, and we'll test the one of the example. This is using Docker, and then how these container images can be published in the Azure using ACR, and how we will run the solution, a scalable solution, I would say, using AKS in terms of running the Kubernetes cluster. We'll see a deployment and application and then testing on a high level that we will try to cover off in the AKS part. Then when it comes to monitoring, reporting, troubleshooting, analytics, and APM performance monitoring, other stuff, what all the various services that Azure offers in terms of monitoring, and how we will configure and manage the monitoring for your virtual machines, the storage accounts, the databases, applications, networking, and everything that we will try to discuss over here. Then we'll talk about migration. So when I say migration, you have an on-premise customer who has the infrastructure running on VMware or Hyper-V or physical Windows, Linux, and then other flavors too. So how are you going to migrate them into Azure using Azure Migrate tool, and also how are you going to migrate the database using Azure DMS? So that we will try to discuss here. Then we'll talk about how the how the calculation works and how the cost analysis and optimization takes place in the customer environment, and in a way FinOps. Okay, so the role we call it as financial operations. So FinOps, how the FinOps works, and what are the day-to-day activities that we will try to discuss. Then we'll talk about infrastructure as a code automation. So Azure supports various integrations, various CLI integrations, various code integrations. So one is Azure CLI, another one is your JSON templates using using ARM, right? And then you have the Bicep templates that inbuilt Azure provides. Also, there's a Terraform, okay, which is purely infrastructure as a code component. Also, you can do a PowerShell, you can do Bash script. Uh, Scenarios are there. So we will try to the training. So and then we will move on to DevOps, how you will integrate your infrastructure deployments and application deployments using the Azure DevOps, how you can perform this or else say the non-interactive deployments using YAML manifest or YAML files, right? And how you can develop the YAML pipelines and then deploy the application in Azure. That we will try to test using Azure DevOps. Now, moving on to management and governance. So, what sort of compliance, governance, and then the best practices, and then cloud adoption frameworks that needs to be considered when you are developing any solution to the customer, and what are the best practice solutions that we need to consider when you're implementing anything for the customer. That we will try to understand, and at the end we will talk about what all the certifications that we can appear for after practicing for a couple of months. Then how the customer project looks like. If you're working as an admin, what sort of a project and how the day-to-day activities looks like. If you're working as a solution architect, what sort of day-to-day activities or solution designing approach works. And similarly, for the Azure DevOps, if you are Azure DevOps engineer or Azure DevOps architect, so what sort of a day-to-day activities that you will handle in terms of your role. So for each and every job role, there are two areas. One is beginner and an expert. So we will try to cover in that direction. And this overall program will take roughly 45 days and daily 1 hour 15 minutes. So it is going to be 55 to 60 hours of training. Going to start from 1st of May morning 6:45 to 8 o'clock IST. So the link is already provided in the description. Also, you can see on my blog page under home in my blog page in the first link, you can directly click on the demo link and then join the free demo sessions on the 1st May. So thank you, and I'll see you on the demo day. Thank you, guys.